Howdy folks, Connor of Tracking the Cross here, coming at you with a very special Independence Day episode. This episode is unique in that it takes place before our country actually gains its independence. So all of this takes place before July 4th, 1776. And I'm going to try to do all this in one take, so here we go. On March 22nd, 1765, the Stamp Act is passed by Parliament of Great Britain in spite of protests made by the people living in the colonies. Taxation without representation was an abuse of sovereign power on the part of His Majesty King George. The Virginian Patrick Henry spoke up on behalf of not only the colony of Virginia, but of the spirit of revolution and independence that had been stirring within the hearts of all colonists who believed in the spirit of opposition. The group that rose up from this became known as the Sons of Liberty, and in Georgia they were called the Liberty Boys. Boston patriot James Otis organized a meeting of what would be the First Continental Congress on Monday, October 7th, 1765. Georgia was not able to send delegates to this congressional meeting due to the influence of the royal governor, James Wright, who had ordered the Georgia House of Assembly not to send any representatives of the Georgia colony. However, they instead sent a messenger to collect the minutes of the meeting and to let the Continental Congress know that the colony of Georgia supported colonial sovereignty wholeheartedly. Skipping ahead to May 9th, 1766. King George III and the British Parliament repealed the Stamp Act, although it took the news 2 months to reach the shores of the colonies. Once the news finally arrived May 9th, 1766, patriots and loyalists alike were overjoyed. However, patriotism continued to spread throughout the colonies, and with the passing of the Declaratory Act by Parliament on the same day the Stamp Act was repealed, this gave the Crown authority to make laws binding the colonies in all matters whatsoever, adding fuel to the fire of the independence movement. After consistent silence from Parliament about any appeals written by the colonists, the colonial citizens decided to place a ban on any imports from the mother country, determined to create or manufacture anything they could at home in the colonies. On December 16, 1773, instead of repealing laws deemed unfair by the colonists, their ban on imported goods only decreased their favor in the eyes of the Crown, especially after the events of the Boston Tea Party. In addition to closing the port of Boston, laws were passed stating that Massachusetts could not publicly convene unless given written permission from the royal governor of Massachusetts, who was also now allowed to send Massachusetts citizens to Great Britain if they aided the Massachusetts government. On July 20th, 1774, in the Savannah newspaper, the Georgia Gazette, was published an invitation to the people of Georgia to meet at Tondy's Tavern in Savannah to discuss the unjust laws passed by Parliament targeting Massachusetts. Now, Tondy's Tavern was actually a makeshift Georgia capital at the time, so this place was incredibly important to Georgia history. This specific meeting was adjourned until August 10th in order to give the representatives of each parish or jurisdiction of Georgia to have their voices heard. On August 10th, 1774, the meeting at Tondy's yielded several adopted resolutions, the most important of which stated that His Majesty King George III's subjects in the colonies were owed the same allegiance and were entitled to the same rights and privileges as their neighbors across the pond in the mother country. It's a new year, January 18th, 1775. The Liberty Boys arranged a meeting of the Provincial Congress in Savannah. When Governor Wright caught wind of this, he also held a meeting of the Georgia General Assembly the same day, hoping to dampen the spirits of the Congress. He warned the members of the Assembly to remain loyal to the Crown. The members of the upper house agreed, while the lower house, of which the Liberty Boys made up a majority, were in favor of independence. The lower house's opinion caused Governor Wright to adjourn the assembly until May 9th, while the Provincial Congress adjourned on February 10th, giving Georgia no time to appoint delegates to the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia. Provincial Congress members were divided on whether or not to adopt the resolutions set forward by the Continental Congress, so much so that the delegates elected to go to the Second Continental Congress meeting in Philadelphia ended up declining. This left Georgia still being on the outside of the action taking place within the Continental Congress, with the other colonies feeling deeply hurt, assuming Georgia was uninterested in the shared quest for independence. 7 days before adjourning, however, the delegates of St. John Parish withdrew from the Provincial Congress when they realized the timidity of the other members kept them from going to Philadelphia. They elected Dr. Lyman Hall to represent their parish in the Philadelphia Congress. On May 10, 1775, the Second Continental Congress is held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. By this time, news had reached Savannah about the deadly battles of Lexington and Concord, and the patriots were enraged. The next night, May 11th, the Liberty Boys broke into the magazine where gunpowder and ammunition were held and seized about 600 pounds of gunpowder. Some was sent to South Carolina, while the rest was hidden in Patriot cellars. Tradition states that some of the powder was sent to Massachusetts, where it was used to drive the British back at the Battle of Bunker Hill. On June 4, 1775, Governor Wright was aiming to fire cannon salutes in honor of King George's birthday, but the cannon had been spiked, dismounted, and rolled to the bottom of the bluff, courtesy of the Liberty Boys. Now here's where this podcast episode really has its highlight. On June the 5th, 1775, the first Liberty pole in the colony is erected in Savannah, Georgia. Now you may be asking, what in the world is a Liberty pole? So here's a quick history. Along with a Liberty pole, a Liberty cap goes hand in hand. So let's talk about the Liberty cap first. A Liberty cap was originally placed atop the Liberty pole. A Liberty cap is a red cap that has its origins in a pointed red Phrygian cap worn by freedmen in Anatolia, or present-day Turkey. In Roman times, during a battle, a conquering general would raise up a pole with a Liberty cap mounted on it, calling on slaves to stand with them. If they did, the slaves would then receive freedom. That's how a Liberty pole got its name. So, being that a Liberty cap was traditionally red, it made sense that a red flag was waved in the place of the cap in the days leading up to the American Revolution. These flags were often placed on flagpoles atop Liberty trees, but when trees were scarce, patriots would stand them up anywhere they felt led. In this case, in Savannah, near Tondy's Tavern. After this Liberty pole was erected and rifles fired in the spirit of liberty, the patriots met in Tondy's Tavern to drink, while the loyalists drank to the king's health in honor of his birthday. The patriots drank to the spirit of independence. Much of this episode was backstory leading up to the erection of the Liberty pole, which was this episode's highlight. However, context is very important, which is why I included so much information about pre-revolutionary Georgia. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, and we will be coming at you with more episodes very shortly. So I hope you all have a very safe and happy Independence Day, a happy 4th of July. And when you go to your parties or go to your gatherings of friends, I hope you can tell them a little bit more about Georgia's history and tell them all about what Liberty poles and Liberty caps meant. Y'all have a safe and happy 4th. We'll see you next time.